eyes are on the United Kingdom as King Charles III is set for his coronation. Hundreds have been camped outside Buckingham Palace for days in preparation for this historic event, with potentially billions of people watching from home. However, not everyone is as enthused. Anti-monarchy sentiment has grown in recent years, both in the UK and the Commonwealth of Nations, many of which have the British monarch as their head of state. Barbados officially became a republic in 2021, while several other nations, including several in the Caribbean, have contemplated leaving the Commonwealth for a variety of reasons, including for diplomatic relations with other nations and the UK's history with the slave trade. The latter is a talking point in the UK as to why the monarchy should be abolished, as well as the argument that having a hereditary leader is undemocratic, especially ones funded by taxpayers, while sheltering Prince Andrew from trial over sexual assault. Opposing these views, those in favour of keeping the monarchy note that they bring in more money through tourism than they cost, with an estimated $2 billion coming in through tourism each year, whilst noting its importance to British history and society. King Charles has a lot to live up to, succeeding the longest reigning monarch in British history and one of the most popular and recognisable leaders in Queen Elizabeth II. Is this a natural place for the British monarchy to end? A recent poll showed that 65% of Brits don't care about the coronation. Is it justified to be spending hundreds of millions on this event whilst the UK is going through a cost of living crisis? Would removing the royal family erase British history and culture? Should the British monarchy be abolished?
So let's get to it, gentlemen. Should the British monarchy be abolished? Simply put, as always, we begin with our quickfire round. 30 seconds each to lay out your initial stance on the matter, and we'll pick it up from there. Charles Golding, please take the lead. Your 30 seconds are on.
Hello. Well, listen, in a nutshell, no, it shouldn't be abolished. But let me tell you why. The British monarchy plays a positive role, not just in the UK, but abroad as well. It acts as a unifying force. It promotes charitable causes. As you said in your excellent piece there, it also brings in millions of dollars. It preserves cultural heritage. And most importantly, in my opinion, it plays a leading role in international and diplomatic relations. And having worked with them and alongside them, I think it's a good thing.
Okay, we'll tell us much more in a split second. Adam Schwarz, your thoughts?
Well, I think broadly speaking, of course, the concept of a hereditary monarchy is fundamentally incompatible with basic principles of representative liberal democracy. I think in reality, government attention is actually very limited, and there are far more important policy and constitutional priorities. And I think a national debate on replacing the monarchy at this time would be a distraction and cause more divisions. But in the meantime, by all means, I think we should try to reform the monarchy to try to moderate some of its most outdated aspects.
Last but definitely not least, Mr. Peter Tatchell, your take.
The monarchy is an archaic feudal system. It is a leftover from a bygone age. It is an affront to democracy that the position of head of state of the UK is inherited by one very privileged man rather than being elected and accountable to the people. Plus, this monarchy has fabulous wealth. They have 23 royal palaces and residences, 700 servants, and a personal wealth of £2 billion.
Yeah. Okay. On that note, gentlemen, let's please feel free to interact. I'm looking forward to hear you, gentlemen. I do want us to begin with the coronation itself because I feel it entails much more than just symbolic aspects here. And I do want to begin with you, Adam Schwarz. Will the request from the public to pledge allegiance going to backfire to an extent?
I think it fundamentally will backfire. I think myself and many others are actually very surprised to see this included, particularly given the fact that it's never been included in any kind of coronation ceremony before. I think it's fundamentally un-British in its nature. I think, in America, we're used to seeing school children, every day pledge allegiance to the flag. But I think, British patriotism tends to be much more sort of understated. And I think fundamentally they've actually got this the wrong way around. And of course, the coronation is a moment for the monarch to pledge their allegiance to the country. And I think, for most people, I think actually they're not particularly anti-monarchy, but I think, certainly something like this will put them in quite an awkward position at home where actually they won't feel particularly comfortable doing something like this. I think it certainly will backfire, in my opinion.
Mr. Golding, what do you think?
Oh, please, Charles. I always think Mr. Golding is my father's name, so Charles will be fine. Not because it's King Charles or indeed Prince
Well,
Charles.
it is befitting. It is befitting.
Thank you. I actually don't see a problem with it. For years, people have had to pledge. They wouldn't let Disraeli, as you know, join Parliament until he took a Christian pledge. Not just a Christian, they wouldn't let Catholics in either. But bit by bit, people got to accept the idea of a pledge, and that when I go to Her Majesty, and now it's His Majesty's Court of Law, we are not subject citizens in England. When I lived in England, we were subjects. It gives us a chance to say, yes, I'm for the king. I'm actually shocked in Israel when I'm here that they don't make at least members of the Knesset do something like that and say, yes, I agree with the state of Israel. They don't even have that. So I think it's a personal, it won't backfire at all. May I just say, these two other gentlemen, as honourable and venerated as they are, don't represent the majority of people in Britain. I'm not saying I do, but I think people have a much more laid-back, laissez-faire attitude. Sometimes they like the King and Queen. They love Diana. They didn't like the new Queen as to be of England. And bit by bit, they got used to it. And that's what it is. We say in all our movies and in all the things in England, I studied, as I'm sure, Adam, you did too, constitutional law. We say the Queen is dead, long live the King. And it's that continuity that puts up with backfiring. All cars backfire now and again.
Well, in this respect, a recent poll is suggesting that 65% of Brits simply do not care about the coronation. And about 70% of young people do not care about the royal family whatsoever. So will indifference be killing the royal family at last, Peter Tatchell?
Well, I think public opinion is definitely shifting in favour of an elected head of state. Nearly 4 in 10 young people want the right to choose our head of state and not have it imposed upon us without our consent. Moreover, with regard to the Pledge of Allegiance, it does come from a position of weakness and, I suppose, fear and anxiety about the level of public support. The fact that we're being invited or encouraged to pledge allegiance, I think, is a sign of weakness on the part of the royals. I'd also add that, with regard to the coronation, 73% of the public say that the royal family themselves should pay for some or all of the coronation. It's going to cost somewhere between 100 to perhaps even 250 million pounds when you factor in security costs. That's an incredible amount of money at a time when so many families are struggling to put food on their tables during this cost of living crisis. So it's all these factors that are boiling down to move public opinion towards greater support for a republic. And a lot of us feel that the monarchy represents the acme of the class system. It symbolizes elitism, privilege, snobbery, and deference. And they don't have any place in a modern democracy.
Well, Charles Golding, I can see you nodding.
Well, it's an interesting thing, but rather a bit like the monarchy itself. That's a fantasy argument. It's not about the cost of a particular thing. If you want to ask my advice, and nobody has, but I'll say it anyway, Britain is monarched out at the moment, celebrations-wise. We buried the Prince, the Duke of Edinburgh. We buried the Queen. There's been the Jubilee celebrations. Everybody gets a day off. Everybody has a street party or goes and just gets drunk. It's more popular than the cost of how much they brought in. Peter, I caught a snatch of what you said a few years ago concerning the cost and how you argued with someone from the Daily Mail. I was dep ed for many years of the Express. And you argued and you said, well, actually, it's a false figure. And you're right. She said it cost everybody a quid, a pound something. And you said, actually, it cost trillions. And it's not about the money side of it. It's more about people who want to change the system. And I believe you do. People who look at democracy as our other guest. Did I call you the wrong name, Adam? I'm so sorry if I did. Is it Adam?
It is.
It is, yes.
It is. Oh, thank God for that. I can't remember my children's names, so I get this completely wrong. But you talked about a constitutional monarchy, and I like the observations by the philosopher Adler, who said democracy is like a raft. It never sinks, but damn it, your feet are always in the water. And that's what this is about. We haven't seen a backlash, don't you worry. Kings come and kings go. Queens come. My mother's seen, I think, 5 queens. She's 92. 5 monarchs.
bless
She's seen 3 coronations. She saw Churchill being buried, just like all of them. It'll go on. It will carry on. I mean, you could get an elected... Can you imagine a President Tony Blair? It would be a disaster to have a president in Britain. A disaster.
Okay, Adam Schwarz, I do want to go back to you and back to the coronation. Is the decision to include other faiths in the ceremony an admission to past racism of sort, or am I reading too much into that?
No, I think that's a very accurate observation. I think the reality is this is the first coronation in 70 years, and it's recognized that, times change, and with every coronation, naturally, you would hope that they would try to make the customs and traditions a little bit more contemporary. But I think it's also, reflective of the kind of changing nature of both Britain and the Commonwealth. I think, certainly compared to 1952, when we had the Queen's coronation, the fact is the UK and the Commonwealth as well, just far more sort of multicultural societies. Not just religion, but several different backgrounds as well. I think you also seen the addition of different UK languages, from languages in Wales and Northern Ireland as well, which I think is really important that we sort of move away from this concept of English being the sort of dominant language or just the only language that we're really able to use in any kind of ceremony. So I think it's a very accurate observation, but I think it certainly does raise issues of the kind of wider issues of royalty in society and how diverse they are.
Peter Tatchell, in the short time we have left before we need to take a break, wrap it up for us.
I think people are quite entitled to celebrate the coronation and the king if they wish. I and others will be protesting because we believe in democracy. We believe that the highest public office in the land, head of state, should be elected by the people and accountable to the people. And you cannot have an inherited head of state in a modern 21st century democracy.
Well, one is celebrating with beers, others are celebrating with flags protesting. That's okay. Okay, we are taking a quick break now, but when we get back, we dive in deeper into the state of the Commonwealth. So do not go anywhere. A few minutes and we're back with the summit. Welcome back to our Royal Summit with our royal guests, Charles Golding, Peter Tatchell, Adam Schwarz. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for staying with us. We're also, of course, staying on topic, but before we get back to our conversation, well, he's not just king of the United Kingdom. Will the Commonwealth be united by the kingdom? Let's take a listen.
If the Commonwealth wants to be seen, as it clearly does, as a modern institution, a modern multilateral institution, we have to get beyond the issue of having the head being reserved to any one country or any one family. You don't find that in any other major diplomatic body, and I think it's an error that perpetuates some of the very unfortunate history of the Commonwealth.
Let's get to it, gentlemen. Another quick fire round, 30 seconds each. Bluntly put, is there any purpose for the Commonwealth to still exist? Adam Schwarz, please take the lead.
Well, the Commonwealth was established as a successor organisation to the British Empire to maintain those links between the countries. And I think the Commonwealth could play a very unique role in trying to right those historical wrongs from the British Empire. And indeed, the Commonwealth Charter does emphasise democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. But I think when we have a situation where the head of the Commonwealth is the UK monarch, that does undermine the notion that fundamentally the Commonwealth is about righting those historical wrongs.
Peter Tatchell, your thoughts?
Well, I echo Adam. I mean, the Commonwealth is rooted in colonialism and the oppression of hundreds of millions of people across the world. And of course, the royal family for 300 years both enabled and profited from slavery, which caused immense human suffering to people, mostly in Africa. So I think we really do need to ask, is the Commonwealth worth having? In principle, it is. But so many Commonwealth countries violate the Commonwealth Charter. They are some of the world's major human rights abusers.
Charles Golding.
Hi. Well, I will say this. Yes, definitely it's worth it if the countries want to be members. I mean, Peter, when you made the last comments, you have to take yourself out of being, in a sense, an older white man like I am. You're saying, well, we should do this, they should do that. Maybe we ought to. If they want to stay in the Commonwealth, they can. And if there's just one person left in the Commonwealth and the door is left open and he leaves the room, there's no Commonwealth. So it's not for a bunch of British people to decide.
So,
It's them.
Yeah, please.
Well, I was going to say it's them.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, my bad. Charles, let's try to advocate for the royal family now. How can it stay relevant?
Well, I like the question before, and it's a shame I couldn't get my teeth into that, because that's how. He's changed. Charles has changed. He was a little boy who saw his mum go away to Australia. For any of you who followed The Crown or even the Windsors, you'll know he went to Australia. He charmed people. His mother went to Australia, charmed people there. When she came back, she wandered down the stairs, shook Charles's hand, not kissed and cuddled him, and walked off to talk to other people after not seeing him. He's changed. He was brought up that way, and he's changed. And I want to give you an example, not just of the wonderful things he does for Muslims in Britain, but I've met him a couple of times. I've spoken to him about the Holocaust. Actually, there you saw the picture with his wife, and wishing that their parents had done more. He's a man who knows. So let me just tell you this little glimpse. How has this man changed? He's decided to think about other religions. That doesn't mean paying lip service to Jews, Muslims, Christians, gays, straights, and others. It means doing something. You should know, just to tell you, we're an Israeli station here. The national religion is still Judaism. That the chief rabbi of London, obviously on the Sabbath, couldn't go to anything like his predecessors because it was on a Saturday, and he lived in Hendon, North London, miles away. Do you know that Charles called him up and invited him to spend the night before in Buckingham Palace with his wife, with kosher food, to enable him? He's a great enabler. He's a new man in the old sense of the word.
It is a great story. Question being, will it be enough to appeal to the younger generation? Adam Schwarz, perhaps downsizing is the answer here, following the footsteps of the Danish royals?
I think it's absolutely right. I mean, I mentioned a little bit earlier, I think reform would be quite a good thing to do initially, or at least it's a minimum thing that should be done right now to deal with some of the issues. I think downsizing is one of the major things that could have a benefit for both sort of public purse, but also the royal family themselves. I think one of the issues of the wider royal family is that actually there isn't much of a role for people who are sort of on the periphery and who will never be king. So, for example, the king or queen's siblings, they're in quite an awkward position because they know they're never going to be the monarch, but they're also never able to have a kind of proper normal life. So I think if we had a much more slimmed down monarchy, when we perhaps was only limited to the people who would be directly next in line to the throne, that would certainly help with that issue. But I think there are other issues of reform as well, such as reducing the tax loopholes, which I think fundamentally can't be justified in a sort of modern society when you have increasing issues of inequalities of wealth. But just on the previous point that Charles was mentioned all the terrific things about Charles, and I certainly don't have anything against him, but I don't see how any of those things couldn't be replicated by an elected head of state, or you could even have an elected king or queen if you wanted to call them that and keep that traditional title.
Circling back to another point Charles was making about the changing temper, if you will, or sentiment of the royals themselves. In this respect, Peter Tatchell, is the Prince Harry saga damaging or helping the royals?
Well, I think that's completely separate. I mean, it certainly has probably damaged the royals, but, that's not the case for a republic. People support a republic for the democratic principle and just in terms of equality and social justice. I mean, it's outrageous that King Charles inherited about £1 billion in wealth and assets from his mother and did not pay a penny in inheritance tax.
So what?
Everybody else has to pay inheritance tax.
So what?
He inherited £533 million worth of jewellery, much of it, or some of it, looted from colonies during colonisation. I mean, these are all very bad things which people feel understandably angry about. And that is why public opinion is shifting against the monarchy. We want to have a slimmed down monarchy. The royal family in Britain, the monarchy, it costs 7 times more than the Spanish royal family. It's the most expensive royal family in Europe. We pay as taxpayers £86 million to the royals. In addition, through their control of the duchies of Lancaster and Cornwall, they take another 40 million. And over the last 70 years, all in all, the royals have taken £1.2 billion, despite the fact that they are themselves multimillionaires.
Charles.
It doesn't seem fair.
Busting to say something. This is not about look how much money he's got. If it's a separate argument about the Koh-i-Noor diamond being taken from India, you're right. I probably have the same view of you as about the Elgin marbles and the Golden Pagoda, which my brother used to work with in the British Library and the British Museum. These are colonial things. We should return them. But this isn't about money. It's so much bigger than that. And to go on, Adam, to your point, I made a little list before I came. I would do, I'm a journalist, with pictures. And the pictures show who's in line to what. When you say slim down, and I'll just point, you don't have to see the faces, but you can at least see the fingers. So there's Charles and Diana of blessed memory, Zikron Levracha, and then you've got Camilla. Now, you've got first in line, William, you've got fifth in line, so you'll have to have the second, third and fourth, the princes of Wales, George, Charlotte, the princess and Louis. Then, by the time you get over here, it's a pockmark of all of them. So how many are you going to have? 5, 6, 7? Okay. What do we do with the rest? Lock them up?
We're nearing the end of our discussion, so in a yes or no answer, gentlemen, please. Is King Charles merely keeping the seat warm for his son? Is he just a placeholder? Peter?
Well, he has always wanted to be king. Public opinion was in favour of him vacating the crown and passing the monarchy directly to William. He's not done that because he wanted it for himself, which is understandable. He's waited all these years. Fair enough.
Adam, yes or no?
I think he has a very important role to reform and bring the royal family up to date.
Charles Golding?
No.
Okay, and on that note, gentlemen, thank you so very much for joining us. Charles Golding, Peter Tatchell, Adam Schwarz. It was a pleasure speaking to you and listening to you. Hopefully we'll see you back on the show soon. Thank you very much for this.